In the gleaming offices of Premier Marketing Solutions, Emma Richardson was about to face her worst nightmare made manifest. What started as reviewing quarterly reports took a shocking turn when she came face to face with the name that had haunted her for 3 years. Jake Mitchell, her new department manager. Emma wasn't your typical corporate survivor. For 3 years, she had spent her life rebuilding from the ashes of an abusive relationship, known for her methodical brilliance and quiet determination. When she encountered Jake's systematic campaign to destroy her career, she had no idea she was walking into a battle that would expose corruption reaching the highest levels of the company, and that her response would transform her from victim to strategic mastermind, making both Jake and the HR director, who protected him, completely unemployable. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The email notification chimed softly on Emma Richardson's laptop, barely audible over the hum of activity in Premier Marketing Solutions' open plan office. She glanced at it absently while reviewing quarterly campaign metrics, her mind focused on the presentation she'd deliver to the Morrison Industries account later that afternoon. The subject line read, "Welcome our new marketing department manager, Jake Mitchell." The coffee mug slipped from Emma's fingers, sending hot liquid splashing across her desk and onto the floor. Her heart hammered against her ribs as if trying to escape her chest entirely. The name on the screen blurred as her vision tunneled, the familiar sounds of the office fading into white noise. Jake Mitchell. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she'd last seen that name, since she'd fled their shared apartment with nothing but a suitcase and bruises hidden beneath carefully applied concealer. 3 years of therapy, of rebuilding herself from the ground up, of learning to sleep without checking the locks twice. 3 years of convincing herself she was safe. "Emma? You okay?" David Rodriguez, the eager junior associate who sat across from her, looked up from his computer with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost. If only it were that simple." Ghosts stayed buried. Jake Mitchell, apparently, did not. "I'm fine," she managed, her voice sounding foreign to her own ears. "Just need to. Excuse me for a moment." Emma's legs felt unsteady as she made her way to the women's restroom, each step requiring conscious effort. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright, the air too thin. She pushed through the door and locked herself in the furthest stall, pressing her back against the cool metal as her breathing became rapid and shallow. "He found me." The thought circled her mind like a predator. He actually found me. The panic attack hit with familiar brutality. Her chest tightened, making each breath a struggle. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the office's air conditioning. The walls of the stall seemed to close in as memories she'd worked so hard to compartmentalize came flooding back. "You're nothing without me, Emma. No one else will ever want damaged goods like you. You made me do this. If you weren't so stupid, so worthless, try to leave me and I'll destroy you. I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are." Emma gripped the sides of the toilet paper dispenser, grounding herself in the present. Dr. Foster's voice echoed in her mind. "When the panic comes, remember your breathing exercises. You are not there anymore. You are safe. You survived. 4 counts in. Hold for 4. 4 counts out. Repeat." Gradually, her heartbeat slowed. The tightness in her chest eased. She was Emma Richardson, senior marketing specialist at one of Seattle's most prestigious agencies. She had her own apartment with locks she'd changed herself. She had friends, colleagues who respected her work. She had a life Jake couldn't touch. Except now he could. Now he would be her direct supervisor. Her phone buzzed with a text. The number was saved as Lifeline in her contacts. "Dr. Foster, our 3 p.m. is still available if you need to move it up. How are you feeling today?" Emma's fingers trembled as she typed back, "Emergency. Can you talk now?" The response came immediately. "Step outside. I'll call in 2 minutes. The autumn air in downtown Seattle was crisp against her skin as Emma found a quiet corner of the building's plaza. When her phone rang, she answered on the first ring. Emma, I can hear the panic in your text. What's happened? Dr. Angela Foster's voice was calm, steady, an anchor in Emma's churning thoughts. For a moment, Emma couldn't speak. How did you explain that your worst nightmare had just become your daily reality? He's here, she whispered. Jake. He's been hired as my new manager. The silence on the other end stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Tell me what you're feeling right now. Not thinking, feeling. Terrified, trapped, like I'm right back where I was 3 years ago. Emma's voice cracked. I worked so hard to get away from him, Dr. Foster. I built this life, this career, and now he's just here, like none of it mattered. Everything you've built matters, Emma. Your healing, your strength, your professional accomplishments, none of that disappears because he's appeared in your workspace. You're not the same person you were 3 years ago. But what if I am? What if all of this? She gestured at the building behind her, though Dr. Foster couldn't see it. What if it's just an illusion? What if the moment he starts using those tactics again, I just break? Have you broken yet today? Emma considered this. She'd had a panic attack, yes, but she'd managed it. She'd recognized the symptoms, used her coping strategies, removed herself from the triggering environment. No, she admitted. Then you're already proving you're not the same person. The Emma from 3 years ago wouldn't have been able to step outside and call for help. She would have blamed herself and tried to handle it alone. Emma felt a spark of something that might have been strength. So what do I do? What are your options? I could quit. I could transfer departments. I could... Emma paused, another option forming in her mind. One that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. I could stay and fight. And what would fighting look like? Documentation, evidence, making sure that if he tries to hurt me, or anyone else, I have proof. Emma's voice grew stronger, with each word. I know his patterns now. I know what to watch for. When she returned to the office, Emma found Sarah Chen waiting by her desk with cleaning supplies and a fresh cup of coffee. David mentioned you had a spill, Sarah said, her dark eyes studying Emma's face with the intensity of someone trained to notice digital security breaches. You sure you're okay? You look like someone just told you the server farm caught fire. Sarah was Emma's closest work friend, the only person at Premier who knew about her past, though not the details. They'd bonded over shared experiences of workplace discrimination and a mutual appreciation for true crime podcasts during lunch breaks. Something like that, Emma said, accepting the coffee gratefully. Sarah, hypothetically, if someone needed to document everything that happened to them at work, every conversation, every email, every meeting, what would be the best way to do that? Sarah's eyebrows rose. Hypothetically, you'd want multiple backup systems, cloud storage with encryption, time-stamped documentation, maybe some kind of recording app for meetings, though you'd need to check the legality on that. She paused. Emma, are you in some kind of trouble? Before Emma could answer, the elevator doors opened across the office. A familiar figure stepped out, tall, sandy-haired, wearing an expensive suit and that same charming smile that had once made her feel like the luckiest woman alive. Jake Mitchell. He moved through the office with the confidence of someone who belonged, shaking hands and making small talk. Several of Emma's female colleagues smiled and laughed at whatever he was saying. If they only knew, Emma thought. That's him, she whispered to Sarah. That's why I need the documentation. Sarah's expression hardened as she followed Emma's gaze. Your ex, the one who... Yes, Well, shit. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then her voice took on the determined tone Emma had heard her use when dealing with persistent hackers. Okay, we're going to need a strategy. Jake's presence filled the conference room like smoke, seeping into every corner during his introduction meeting. He spoke about collaboration, innovation, and bringing fresh perspectives to the team. His words were professional, perfectly calibrated for corporate consumption. But his eyes found Emma's repeatedly throughout his presentation, and each time they did, his smile took on a different quality. Private, possessive, familiar. I'm particularly excited to work with the talented individuals who are already contributing so much to this department, he said, his gaze lingering on Emma. Some faces are familiar to me. It's wonderful when professional paths cross again, isn't it? Several colleagues glanced at Emma curiously. She kept her expression neutral, though her hands were clenched into fists beneath the conference table. After the meeting, as people filed out, Jake approached her. Emma. His voice was warm, professionally appropriate, but she heard the undertone that others would miss. I had no idea you worked here. What a pleasant surprise. Jake. She stood, grateful that her voice remained steady. Congratulations on the position. Thank you. I'm looking forward to working together again. We always did make quite a team, didn't we? His smile was perfect, the kind that would photograph well in the company newsletter. I hope we can put any past misunderstandings behind us. I believe in moving forward, don't you? Misunderstandings, as if the bruises had been a simple miscommunication. Of course, Emma replied. I'm sure we'll maintain a professional working relationship. I'm counting on it. Jake's eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement. I'll be scheduling one-on-one meetings with all my team members this week. I'm particularly looking forward to ours. As he walked away, Emma remained standing by the conference table, watching him charm his way through conversations with her colleagues. Sarah appeared at her elbow. Recording app? Sarah murmured. Recording app, Emma confirmed. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment, the one with locks Jake had never touched, and opened a new document on her encrypted cloud drive. At the top, she typed, Jake Mitchell documentation log. Below that, she began writing everything she could remember about their encounter. The time, the location, his exact words, the witnesses present, the way he'd looked at her, the implied threat beneath his professional demeanor. 3 years ago, she'd been a victim with no proof, no power, no voice. But Emma Richardson was no longer that broken woman hiding in a bathroom stall. She had skills now, allies, and most importantly, she had a choice. Jake Mitchell had made a critical error. He'd assumed she was still the same frightened woman he'd once controlled. He was about to discover just how wrong he was. 3 days later, Emma stood outside the Morrison Industries presentation room, her laptop bag containing the proposal she'd spent weeks perfecting. The client meeting was set to begin in 10 minutes, the same meeting Jake had agreed to let, her lead during their department handover session. Emma. Jake's voice behind her made her shoulders tense involuntarily. She turned to find him approaching with David Rodriguez in tow, both carrying presentation materials. Jake, ready for the Morrison presentation? His smile was apologetic, the kind that made him look reasonable and her unreasonable. I'm afraid there's been a change. After reviewing your proposal more thoroughly, I think it needs some refinement. David and I will handle this one. Emma's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. I've been developing this campaign for Morrison for 2 months. The client specifically requested Emma. Jake's tone carried just enough sharpness to suggest she was being difficult. I understand you're disappointed, but as department manager, I need to ensure our clients receive our best work. This campaign? Well, it's creative, but perhaps not quite what Morrison is looking for. David shifted uncomfortably beside Jake, avoiding Emma's eyes. She could see the conflict on his face. He'd witnessed her preparation, knew the quality of her work. "I'd be happy to review your notes and incorporate them into the final presentation," Emma said, fighting to keep her voice professional. "That won't be necessary. David has some excellent insights that will really elevate this proposal." Jake placed a paternal hand on David's shoulder. Sometimes fresh eyes are exactly what a project needs. The meeting room door opened, and Morrison's executives filed out of the elevator. Emma watched her months of work disappear behind glass walls as Jake and David took their seats at the conference table. "Emma?" Sarah's voice came from behind her. "Weren't you supposed to be in there?" "Change of plans," Emma managed, her jaw clenched so tightly it ached. "Bullshit." Sarah studied Jake through the glass as he gestured animatedly to the Morrison team. What reason did he give? Quality concerns. Needed refinement. Emma opened her phone's recording app with practiced efficiency. "Sarah, I need you to help me with something." An hour later, Emma sat in her car in the parking garage, typing furiously into her documentation log. October 15th, 2:30 p.m., Morrison Industries presentation removal. Present, Jake Mitchell, David Rodriguez, Emma Richardson. Jake removed me from Morrison presentation 10 minutes before client meeting. Claimed proposal needed refinement, despite no prior feedback indicating concerns. Used David as replacement presenter. Witnesses. Sarah Chen observed aftermath. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but the message made her blood freeze. Unknown. Saw Jake talking to Morrison today. Heard great things about the presentation. Must be nice having someone who believes in your potential again. A friend. Emma's hands shook as she screenshot the message and added it to her log. Jake's psychological warfare had officially begun. The team meeting 2 days later felt like walking into an ambush. Jake sat at the head of the conference table, radiating the casual authority of someone born to lead. Around him, Emma's colleagues chatted easily, unaware of the tension crackling beneath the surface. "Before we begin," Jake said, his voice warm and inclusive, "I want to address something that's come to my attention. It seems there might be some emotional volatility affecting our team dynamic." Emma's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Every eye in the room turned toward her. "I understand that workplace stress can manifest in different ways," Jake continued, his tone perfectly calibrated, concerned but professional. "And I want everyone to know that if personal issues are affecting your work, my door is always open." "Is there a specific concern?" asked Lisa Chen, the senior account coordinator. Jake's eyes met Emma's briefly before he looked around the table. "I've noticed some colleagues seem unusually anxious lately. Emotional instability can be contagious in a team environment. I just want to ensure we're all supporting each other appropriately." The words hung in the air like a carefully placed landmine. Emma felt the familiar tightness in her chest, but forced herself to breathe steadily. She could see David fidgeting with his pen, his discomfort obvious. "That's very thoughtful of you, Jake," said Tom Martinez from Creative. "Are there specific resources you'd recommend for managing workplace stress?" "Of course. In fact, I've had experience helping colleagues work through various personal challenges before. Sometimes people need more support than they're willing to admit." Jake's smile was beatific. "Emma, you've seemed particularly stressed lately. Is everything okay?" The question landed like a slap. Every face turned toward her, expressions ranging from curiosity to concern to barely concealed pity. Jake had just painted her as emotionally unstable in front of their entire team, while positioning himself as the caring manager trying to help. "I appreciate your concern," Emma replied, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. "I'm managing quite well, actually." "That's wonderful to hear. Though I have to say, removing yourself from meetings unexpectedly and Other behaviors I've observed might suggest otherwise. Jake's tone was gentle, understanding. Please know that seeking help isn't a sign of weakness. Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible. Emma felt the walls closing in as her colleagues exchanged glances. Jake had just publicly suggested she was having mental health issues while seeming to offer support. I think there might be some miscommunication here, Emma said carefully. Perhaps, Jake agreed. Communication can be challenging when someone's emotional state is fluctuating. But that's why I'm here, to provide stability and guidance. After the meeting, Emma found herself alone in the break room, her hands shaking as she poured coffee she didn't want. David appeared in the doorway, looking miserable. Emma, he started, then stopped. That presentation you did for Morrison? It was brilliant. I used most of your ideas. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I know. Emma turned to face him. David, Jake spoke to you about me, didn't he? Before today's meeting. David's face flushed red. He said you had a history of instability, that you might react badly to feedback. He was trying to protect you, he said. And you believed him? I didn't know what to believe, but after watching that meeting, David's voice dropped to a whisper. Emma, what he did in there was fucked up. You're the most stable person in this department. That evening, Sarah appeared at Emma's desk as the office emptied out. Okay, so I did some digging, Sarah said, glancing around to ensure they were alone. Your boyfriend Jake has been busy. He's accessed your project files 7 times in the past week, files he has no business looking at. Emma's blood chilled. Which files? Everything. Client communications, proposal drafts, your calendar. He's mapping your entire professional life. Sarah's expression was grim. There's more. He's been asking IT about your computer usage patterns, claimed he was concerned about productivity issues. Can you prove it? I can print the access logs, but Emma. Sarah hesitated. He's being smart about it, using his administrative privileges, so technically it's not unauthorized. But the pattern? That's predatory behavior. Emma stared at her computer screen, seeing Jake's digital fingerprints all over her work life. He was building a case against her, piece by piece, using his position to gather ammunition for whatever campaign he was planning. He's not just gaslighting me, she realized aloud. He's studying me, learning my habits, my work patterns, my relationships here. Classic abuser behavior, Sarah confirmed. He's using institutional power to do what he used to do with physical intimidation. Emma opened her documentation log and began typing. October 17th, 6:45 p.m. Digital surveillance confirmed. Jake has accessed my project files 7 times without legitimate business reason. Has inquired about my computer usage with IT under guise of productivity concerns. Pattern suggests systematic intelligence gathering. As she typed, Emma felt something shift inside her chest. The familiar fear was still there, but underneath it was something harder, sharper. Jake thought he could use the corporate structure to break her down the same way he'd used their relationship 3 years ago. He'd forgotten one crucial detail. Emma Richardson was no longer fighting alone, and this time, she was documenting everything. The Premier Marketing Solutions annual mixer buzzed with forced networking energy, colleagues clutching wine glasses while making small talk about quarterly projections. Emma nursed a sparkling water near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, watching Marcus Thompson hold court near the appetizer table. The senior vice president of operations commanded attention effortlessly. His rise from entry-level to executive was company legend. Impressive turnout, she said, approaching. him during a lull in conversation. Marcus turned, his expression politely interested. Emma Richardson, isn't it? Senior Marketing Specialist. That's right. I've been following the operational efficiency improvements you implemented last quarter. The client satisfaction metrics speak for themselves. His eyebrows raised slightly. Most people approached him with complaints or requests, not professional compliments backed by actual data. You've been reading the quarterly reports? I believe in understanding how all departments contribute to our success. Emma's smile was genuine but calculated. Speaking of contributions, I was curious about your perspective on leadership transitions. How do you evaluate new management effectiveness? Marcus studied her more carefully now. Interesting question. Why do you ask? Professional curiosity. I've noticed that strong leaders tend to elevate their teams immediately, while weaker ones often struggle with basic delegation and decision-making. Emma paused, letting the observation settle. I imagine you've seen both types during your time here. Indeed. Marcus's tone suggested he was following her subtext. What's your assessment of recent changes in your department? Before Emma could respond, Jake's voice interrupted their conversation. Emma, there you are. Jake appeared beside them, his smile bright and proprietary. Marcus, wonderful to see you again. I hope Emma isn't bending your ear with work talk at a social event. The dismissive tone made Emma's jaw clench, but Marcus's expression sharpened with interest. Actually, Emma was sharing some insightful observations about operational efficiency. Quite impressive analysis. Marcus's gaze flicked between them. You're fortunate to have such a thoughtful team member, Jake. Oh, absolutely. Emma's always been very observant. Jake's laugh carried an edge only Emma caught. Though, sometimes that attention to detail can become a bit overwhelming, can't it, Emma? The public diminishment landed exactly as Jake intended. Emma felt her colleague's eyes on her, watching the dynamic between her and her new manager. But Marcus's expression had shifted to something cooler. I find that thoroughness is rarely a flaw in our business, Marcus said evenly. If you'll excuse me, I see someone I need to speak with. As Marcus walked away, Jake leaned closer to Emma. Careful not to seem too eager, Emma. Desperation isn't a good look. Later that evening, Sarah's voice crackled through Emma's earbuds as she reviewed files in her home office. Found something, Sarah said without preamble. Jake's been billing phantom hours to the Morrison account. 3 days last week when he was actually in meetings about the Henderson project. Emma's fingers stilled on her keyboard. Can you prove it? Calendar inconsistencies, badge access logs, witness statements if we need them. He's billing clients for work he didn't do. Sarah's tone carried grim satisfaction. That's not just poor management, Emma. That's fraud. Send me everything you have. We need to be absolutely certain before. Already encrypted and in your secure folder. But Emma, there's more. I found access logs showing he's been looking at personnel files for other female employees. Jessica Walsh from HR signed off on the requests, claiming they were for team integration purposes. Emma felt ice form in her stomach. Which employees? Lisa Chen, Amy Foster from Creative, Jennifer Walsh. Ironically, Jessica's own niece who works in client services. All high-performing women who've been here longer than Jake. The pattern was becoming horrifyingly clear. Jake wasn't just targeting Emma. He was systematically studying every successful woman in their orbit. Sarah, I need you to do something that might be ethically gray. I'm listening. Monitor his digital activity. If he's planning something against the others, we need to know. The next morning brought vindication in an unexpected form. Emma arrived at her desk to find David waiting with coffee and a deeply troubled expression. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. About Jake and the Morrison presentation. Emma accepted the coffee, noting how David's hands shook slightly. What about it? He used your entire proposal, word for word, in some sections. Just changed the formatting and put my name on it. David's voice was barely above a whisper. The client loved it, obviously, but Jake's taking credit for the strategy you developed. Do you have proof? David pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of the original presentation file properties. I screenshot this before he made me delete the version with your name on it. Look at the creation date and author. Emma studied the image, clear evidence that her work had been appropriated and rebranded. David, why are you telling me this? Because what he did to you in that team meeting was bullshit. And because... He looked around nervously. He warned me about you again yesterday. Said you might try to undermine my success because you're jealous of younger employees. Emma felt the familiar rage bubble up, but channeled it into cold calculation. What exactly did he say? That you have a history of emotional instability when you don't get your way. That you might try to sabotage other people's work or spread rumors. David's voice grew stronger. But Emma, you've been nothing but supportive since I started here. You're the one who taught me the client management software, who stayed late to help me with the Peterson account. I appreciate you telling me this, David. It took courage. There's something else. David glanced toward Jake's office. He asked me to keep track of your interactions with other team members. Said it would help him provide better support for your issues. Emma's blood chilled. Jake was turning her colleagues into unwitting surveillance agents, using their concern for her supposed mental health as motivation. What did you tell him? Nothing useful. But Emma, he's planning something. I can feel it. That afternoon, Emma's first formal complaint to HR felt like stepping into a trap. Jessica Walsh's office was decorated with motivational posters and family photos, the portrait of someone who'd built a career on appearing caring while avoiding difficult decisions. Emma, please sit down. Jessica's smile was professionally warm, but her eyes remained cold. I understand you have some concerns about Jake Mitchell's management style. Emma had prepared carefully for this moment, organizing her documentation and practicing her presentation with Sarah the night before. I'm concerned about several incidents that suggest unprofessional behavior, Emma began, pulling out her printed timeline. Jake removed me from a client presentation I'd developed without prior feedback or explanation. He's made public comments about my emotional stability that seem designed to undermine my credibility. And I have evidence of billing irregularities. Emma. Jessica's voice cut through her presentation like a blade. I'm going to stop you there. Jake came to see me yesterday, actually. He's very concerned about you. The words hit Emma like cold water. Concerned about me? He mentioned that you've been exhibiting some concerning behaviors, paranoid thoughts, claims about being persecuted, difficulty accepting feedback. Jessica's tone was gentle but firm. He's worried that personal stress might be affecting your judgment. Emma felt the room tilt slightly. Jake had gotten to Jessica first, framing Emma's legitimate complaints as symptoms of mental instability. I have documentation of specific incidents, which Jake described as misinterpretations colored by your emotional state. Jessica leaned forward, her expression sympathetic. Emma, have you considered that perhaps therapy might help you process whatever personal issues you're dealing with? The meeting ended 20 minutes later with Emma's complaints dismissed and a gentle suggestion that she consider taking advantage of the company's mental health resources. As she walked back to her desk, Emma felt the familiar walls closing in. But this time, instead of panic, she felt something crystallize into diamond-hard resolve. Jake had made his move, poisoning the well before she could even approach it. Jessica Walsh had revealed herself as an active enabler, more interested in protecting management than investigating legitimate concerns. Emma opened her documentation, log, and began typing. October 20th, 3:45 p.m. HR complaint, dismissed. Jessica Walsh refused to investigate documented concerns about Jake Mitchell's behavior. Claims Jake expressed concerns about my mental state prior to meeting. Clear evidence of coordination between Jake and HR to discredit legitimate complaints. Sarah appeared at her desk minutes later, reading Emma's expression accurately. HR was a bust? Worse than a bust. They're actively working against me. Emma's voice was steady, but Sarah could see the steel beneath it. Sarah, we're not fighting just Jake anymore. This is bigger. How much bigger? Emma looked around the office, at David trying to avoid eye contact, at Jessica Walsh's office where she could see Jake having what appeared to be a very friendly conversation, at the colleagues who'd started treating her differently since Jake's public comments about her stability. Institutional, which means we need to get institutional about fighting back. The war had officially begun. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard in the empty IT department, the glow of multiple monitors casting eerie shadows across her face. It was 9:47 p.m., and Premier Marketing Solutions was officially closed, but Emma sat beside her, watching lines of code scroll past as Sarah navigated through system logs with the precision of a digital archaeologist. There, Sarah whispered, pointing at a series of entries. Jake's been creating fake vendor invoices through the procurement system. Look at these payment authorizations to Strategic Consulting Solutions, a company that doesn't exist. Emma leaned closer, studying the screen. The amounts were substantial but not massive, carefully calculated to fly under audit thresholds. How much total? $43,000 over the past 6 weeks, all routed to accounts he controls. Sarah's expression was grim. He's not just stealing hours, Emma. He's embezzling actual money. Can you trace where it's going? Working on it, but I found something else that's going to make you sick. Sarah opened another window, revealing personnel files. Remember those female employees whose files he accessed? I dug deeper into the request logs. Emma's stomach clenched as Sarah scrolled through the access history. Lisa Chen. He pulled her performance reviews, salary information, and disciplinary history. Same with Amy Foster and Jennifer Walsh. But here's the kicker. He also accessed the file of Rebecca Martinez. I don't know that name, because she's not here anymore. Rebecca was a senior marketing manager who left Premier 6 months ago. Want to guess why? Emma's blood ran cold. Sexual harassment complaint? Constructive dismissal after filing a harassment complaint against her previous manager, who conveniently left for another company right before Rebecca's lawyer got involved. Sarah's voice carried quiet fury. Emma, Jake's studying a playbook. He's researching how Premier handles harassment complaints and which tactics work to force women out. Emma stared at the screen, feeling pieces of a larger puzzle click into place. He's not just targeting me. He's preparing to systematically push out every successful woman in the department. Gets worse. I found email drafts in his deleted items folder, communications he hasn't sent yet but clearly plans to. Want to hear one addressed to Marcus Thompson? Sarah opened the file, and Emma read over her shoulder. Marcus, I wanted to follow up on our conversation about team dynamics. In marketing, I've observed some concerning patterns with Emma Richardson that I believe require immediate attention. Her emotional volatility has escalated to the point where other team members have expressed discomfort. David Rodriguez specifically mentioned feeling intimidated by her reactions to feedback. I'm recommending we consider whether Emma might be better suited to a different role, perhaps one with less client interaction and team responsibility. I have documentation of specific incidents if you'd like to review them. Best, Jake. He's planning to frame me for intimidating David, Emma said, her voice barely controlled. After he's the one who's been coaching David to watch me. There are 3 more drafts like this. 1 to Jessica Walsh about your deteriorating mental health, and 2 to different department heads suggesting you're becoming a liability. Sarah's jaw was tight with anger. He's building a coordinated campaign to destroy your reputation across the entire company. Emma felt something. Inside her chest crack, not from despair this time, but from fury crystallizing into cold determination. "Sarah, I need to tell you something I've never told anyone." "What?" 3 years ago, when I left Jake, he didn't just hurt me physically. He systematically destroyed my previous job, spread rumors about my stability, sabotaged my projects, turned my colleagues against me. Emma's voice grew stronger. "I quit rather than fight him because I was broken and scared. But he destroyed my references, my professional reputation. I had to start over completely." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "He's done this before. Multiple times, I'd guess. It's his pattern when he can't control someone. He destroys them professionally so they can't escape or rebuild." Emma stood up, pacing behind Sarah's chair. "But this time is different." "How?" "This time I have you. This time I have evidence. And this time—" Emma paused, feeling the truth of her next words. "This time I'm not the same person he thinks he's fighting." The next morning brought Jake's escalation in a form Emma hadn't anticipated. She arrived at work to find David Rodriguez waiting by her desk, looking more distressed than she'd ever seen him. "Emma, I need to warn you about something," he said quietly, glancing around the office. "Jake called me into his office yesterday after you left." Emma felt her pulse quicken. "What did he say?" He said you've been making concerning comments about him. That you told me he was stealing from the company and harassing female employees." David's voice dropped to a whisper. "He asked if you'd ever seemed aggressive or unstable around me." "And what did you tell him?" "The truth, that you've never said anything like that, and you've never been anything but professional." David's hands twisted nervously. "But Emma, he didn't believe me. He said you've been manipulating me, that victims of workplace harassment often turn others against their managers as a defense mechanism." Emma felt the walls closing in again. Jake was implementing a preemptive strike, inoculating her colleagues against anything she might say by framing her words as harassment victim paranoia. "David, has Jake ever asked you to document our conversations?" "He gave me a notebook yesterday, said I should write down anything concerning you say or do, for my own protection." David pulled a small black notebook from his pocket. He said, "If this escalates, I might need to testify about your behavior." Emma stared at the notebook, evidence of Jake's systematic approach to building a case against her. But David's willingness to show it to her revealed something crucial. "You don't believe him?" "I did at first. He's very convincing and I'm still new here." David's voice grew stronger. "But then I remembered something. That presentation I gave to Morrison? When the client asked follow-up questions about the strategic framework, I couldn't answer them. Because I didn't develop that framework. You did." Emma felt a spark of hope. Jake told them I was being modest, that I was too humble to take full credit. But I could see the client's confusion. They knew they were talking to the wrong person. David met her eyes directly. "Emma, I've been thinking about everything Jake's told me about you, and none of it matches what I've observed. You're one of the most competent people in this office. David, if you really believe that, I need to ask you to do something difficult." "What?" Emma looked around the office, noting Sarah's subtle nod from across the room, the signal that it was safe to talk. "I need you to keep that notebook Jake gave you, but instead of documenting my supposed problems, I need you to document his actual behavior. What he says about other employees, how he treats people when he thinks no one's watching, the things he asks you to do." David was quiet for a long moment. "You're asking me to spy on my manager. I'm asking you to document the truth. Jake is planning to destroy my career and possibly other people's careers. If we don't stop him, he'll keep doing this to other women." "What if he finds out?" Emma thought about the evidence Sarah had gathered, the pattern of destruction Jake had left in his wake, the draft emails revealing his systematic approach to character assassination. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But David, if we do nothing, he's going to succeed. And the next woman he targets might not have anyone willing to stand up for her. David stared at the notebook in his hands, then looked around the office at their female colleagues, Lisa, Amy, Jennifer, all of whom had no idea they were being studied and assessed by a predator using corporate access to plan their professional destruction. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll do it." That evening, Emma sat in her apartment reviewing the mountain of evidence she and Sarah had compiled. Financial fraud, digital stalking, systematic harassment, character assassination campaigns. Jake's criminal behavior was extensive and well documented. But as she stared at the files, Emma realized something that made her stomach clench with cold fury. All of this evidence, as damning as it was, might not be enough. Jake had positioned himself as the concerned manager dealing with an unstable employee. Jessica Walsh was actively protecting him. The institutional machinery was designed to believe managers over subordinates, men over women, authority over accusations. Emma opened a new document and began typing. Strategic assessment. October 23rd. Documented evidence of criminal behavior may not be sufficient given institutional protection of Jake Mitchell. Need to consider alternative approaches that expose his behavior publicly and make institutional cover-up impossible. For the first time since this nightmare began, Emma allowed herself to think beyond mere survival. Jake had taught her a valuable lesson 3 years ago about the nature of power and destruction. It was time to turn those lessons against him. Emma stood outside Marcus Thompson's corner office at 7:43 a.m., her laptop bag containing a carefully organized presentation that would either vindicate her or end her career at Premier Marketing Solutions. Through the glass walls, she could see Marcus reviewing reports, his usual early morning ritual before the office chaos began. She knocked softly. "Emma." Marcus looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "You're here early. I have something important to show you. It concerns financial irregularities in our department that require immediate attention." Marcus's expression sharpened. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Close the door." Emma set her laptop on his desk and opened a presentation titled Procurement Fraud Analysis, Marketing Department. The first slide showed a clean summary. $47,000 in fraudulent vendor payments over 8 weeks. "This is a serious accusation," Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral. "I have documentation." Emma clicked to the next slide, showing the fake vendor payments Sarah had uncovered. Strategic Consulting Solutions doesn't exist. The business, registration, tax ID, and address are all fraudulent. But the payments are real, and they all trace back to accounts controlled by Jake Mitchell. Marcus leaned forward, studying the evidence. "How did you discover this?" "I noticed billing inconsistencies on client accounts. When I investigated further, I found a pattern of inflated hours and phantom consulting fees." Emma had practiced this lie. She couldn't reveal Sarah's unauthorized access without implicating her friend. The financial trail is clear. "Do you have additional evidence?" Emma clicked through slides showing time-stamped documentation of Jake's behavior, David's witness statements about the appropriated Morrison presentation, and the email drafts, revealing Jake's systematic campaign against female employees. "My God," Marcus muttered, reading the draft email Jake had planned to send about Emma's supposed intimidation of David. "He was planning to accuse you of harassment?" "While simultaneously coaching David to document my behavior as evidence." Emma's voice remained steady despite the rage burning in her chest. "Marcus, this isn't just about financial fraud. Jake is implementing a systematic campaign to push successful women out of this company." Marcus was quiet for several minutes, reviewing the evidence. Finally, he looked up. "Emma, I need to ask you something directly. Is this about your personal relationship with Jake Mitchell? The question Emma had been dreading. She met his eyes steadily. Jake and I dated briefly several years ago. It ended badly. But Marcus, this evidence isn't personal opinion. It's documented criminal activity. The financial fraud alone warrants immediate investigation. And if Jake claims you're targeting him because of your personal history, then he'll have to explain how I fabricated bank records, vendor registrations, and procurement system logs. Emma's confidence surprised even herself. The evidence speaks for itself. Marcus nodded slowly. I'm going to need time to review this thoroughly. Can you send me everything? Already done. Check your secure email. Emma stood to leave, then paused. Marcus, there's something else you should know. External auditors are already reviewing our client billing practices. They'll discover the Morrison account irregularities within days. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. How do you know that? Because I contacted them yesterday. Emma's smile was razor sharp. I thought the company should know about potential liability issues before they become public scandals. 30 minutes later, Emma watched from her desk as Marcus Thompson strode across the office toward Jake's corner office, his expression grim. Through the glass walls, she could see Jake's confident smile falter as Marcus closed the door and began speaking. Sarah appeared at Emma's shoulder. External auditors are here, she murmured. 3 of them, heading straight for the conference room with boxes of financial records. Emma felt adrenaline surge through her system. Right on schedule. The morning unfolded like a carefully orchestrated performance. The auditors requested specific documentation about vendor payments and client billing. Jake's increasingly frantic phone calls to Jessica Walsh were visible through his office windows. David approached Emma's desk with wide eyes. What's happening? He whispered. Jake just asked me to confirm that you've been acting erratically lately. But there are auditors here asking about billing records. Tell him the truth, Emma said calmly, that I've been nothing but professional. At 11:30 a.m., Emma received an email marked urgent from a local business reporter. Ms. Richardson, I've received information about potential fraud at Premier Marketing Solutions. Would you be available for comment regarding systematic financial irregularities in your department? My source indicates you may have information relevant to this investigation. Emma stared at the email. She hadn't contacted any reporters. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Check Channel 7 News website, now. Emma opened the link to find a breaking news story. Seattle marketing firm under investigation for financial fraud. The article was brief but damning, mentioning anonymous whistleblower allegations and ongoing audits. Across the office, Jake's door flew open. His face was flushed red as he scanned the office, his eyes locking on Emma. Even from 50 feet away, she could see the rage and something that might have been fear. At 1:15 p.m., the Henderson Industries crisis erupted. Emma was reviewing client proposals when her phone rang. Emma Richardson speaking. Ms. Richardson, this is Patricia Henderson from Henderson Industries. We have a serious problem with our campaign launch. Emma's blood chilled. Henderson was their biggest client, and their product launch was scheduled for the following week. What kind of problem, Patricia? The promotional materials we received don't match our brand guidelines. At all. The messaging is completely wrong, the visuals are outdated, and frankly, it looks like someone used our competitor's strategy. Patricia's voice was tight with anger. We specifically requested that you handle this account, but apparently Mr. Mitchell decided to make changes without consulting us. Emma closed her eyes, understanding immediately what had happened. Jake had sabotaged the Henderson account, probably expecting Emma to be blamed for the failure. Patricia, I'm looking at the original campaign materials now. Can you give me 4 hours to fix this? 4 hours? We need these materials by end of business today for tomorrow's board presentation. I understand. I'll handle it personally. Emma was already opening design files, her mind racing through solutions. You'll have corrected materials by 5 p.m. The next 4 hours were a blur of frantic activity. Emma rebuilt the entire campaign from scratch while Sarah coordinated with the design team and David helped proof materials. Word spread through the office that Henderson was threatening to pull their account, Premier's largest revenue source. At 4:47 p.m., Emma sent the corrected campaign materials to Henderson Industries. At 5:03 p.m., Patricia Henderson called back. Emma, this is exactly what we wanted. How did you turn this around so quickly? I had the original strategy prepared as a backup. We should have used it from the beginning. Emma's voice was steady, despite her exhaustion. Patricia, I want to personally apologize for the confusion and assure you that your account will receive the attention it deserves going forward. At 5:30 p.m., Marcus Thompson sent a company-wide email. Due to ongoing investigations into financial irregularities, Jake Mitchell has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending the outcome of external audits. Emma Richardson will serve as interim department manager effective immediately. All questions should be directed to my office. Emma stared at the email, feeling something between triumph and disbelief. Across the office, she could see colleagues reading their phones with shocked expressions. Jake's office was empty, his personal items already cleared out. Sarah appeared at her desk with a bottle of champagne. Henderson Industries just sent a thank you email praising your crisis management skills. They're extending their contract for another 2 years. Emma looked around the office, at David giving her a thumbs up, at Lisa Chen approaching with congratulations, at Jessica Walsh's office where she could see frantic phone conversations taking place. Sarah, Emma said quietly, I think we just won the first battle. First battle? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Emma, you just exposed financial fraud, saved our biggest client, and got promoted to department manager. That sounds like victory to me. Emma shook her head, thinking about Jake's final look of rage, about Jessica Walsh's panicked phone calls, about the systems that had enabled this in the first place. Jake won't go quietly, and Jessica Walsh was complicit in covering this up. This is just the beginning. As if summoned by her words, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over, Emma. You have no idea what you've started. Emma screenshot the message and added it to her evidence file. Then she looked up at Sarah and smiled, an expression that held no warmth, only calculating determination. Let him come, she said quietly. I'm ready. The attack came at 9:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, delivered through the most public forum possible, the monthly all-hands meeting. Emma sat in the packed conference room, 3 days into her role as interim department manager, when Jake Mitchell walked through the door. He shouldn't have been there. His administrative leave explicitly barred him from company premises, but there he stood in an expensive suit, flanked by a woman Emma didn't recognize carrying a briefcase that screamed, "Lawyer." I apologize for the interruption, Jake announced, his voice carrying the wounded authority of someone unjustly accused. But I need to address the malicious lies being spread about me by someone with a very personal agenda. The room fell silent. Marcus Thompson stood from his seat, his face darkening. Jake, you're not authorized to be here. I'm here to defend my reputation against a vindictive ex-girlfriend who's weaponized corporate resources to destroy me, Jake continued, his eyes finding Emma across the room. Emma Richardson has orchestrated an elaborate fraud, manipulating evidence and exploiting her personal knowledge of my life to fabricate criminal charges. Emma felt every eye in the room turn toward her. The words ex-girlfriend hung in the air like a toxic cloud, instantly recontextualizing everything that had happened. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as colleagues processed this revelation. That's enough, Marcus said, moving toward Jake. Security is on their way. I have evidence, Jake said loudly, pulling out his phone. Financial records showing that Emma Richardson has been systematically altering company documents. witness statements about her erratic behavior and explicit threats against me. The lawyer beside him stepped forward. My client has documentation proving that Ms. Richardson accessed confidential systems without authorization and manipulated data to support false accusations. We're prepared to file criminal charges for fraud, harassment, and corporate espionage. Emma's blood turned to ice. Somehow, Jake had turned her own investigation against her. She could see David across the room, his face pale with confusion and fear. Sarah was nowhere to be seen. Furthermore, Jake continued, his voice gaining strength as he sensed the room's uncertainty, I have evidence that Emma has been stealing client work and claiming credit for projects developed by other team members. The Morrison Industries presentation she's taken credit for? Entirely David Rodriguez's work, which she appropriated after being removed from the project for performance issues. Emma watched David's face crumple. Jake was forcing him to choose between his career and the truth in front of the entire company. David, Jake called out, please tell everyone who really developed the Morrison strategy. The room was dead silent. David's hands trembled as he stood slowly. Emma could see the internal battle playing out on his face. Jake's threats, the pressure of the moment, his own job security hanging in the balance. David's voice cracked. I contributed to the Morrison presentation. Jake's smile was triumphant. Thank you for your honesty, David. It takes courage to speak truth in the face of manipulation. Emma felt the room's energy shift against her. Jake had just publicly branded her as an unstable ex-girlfriend who'd fabricated evidence and stolen credit from junior colleagues. The narrative was perfectly crafted, believable, emotionally resonant, and impossible to disprove. In this public forum, that's not... Emma started to speak, but Jake cut her off. I understand why Emma might feel justified in her actions, he said, his tone now sorrowful and understanding. Our personal relationship ended badly, and I take responsibility for any hurt feelings. But using corporate resources to wage a personal vendetta crosses every ethical line. The lawyer opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. We have documented evidence of Ms. Richardson's misconduct, including unauthorized access to personnel files, manipulation of financial records, and harassment of multiple employees. We're requesting her immediate termination and full investigation. Emma stood, her legs unsteady but her voice clear. Every allegation Jake is making is false. The evidence of his embezzlement is documented and verified by external auditors. Evidence that you manipulated, the lawyer interjected. Our computer forensics expert has analyzed the files in question. They show clear signs of digital tampering. Emma's world tilted. That's impossible. Jake's expression was almost pitying. Emma, I know you're hurting, but destroying my career won't heal whatever pain you're carrying from our past. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Emma could see colleagues looking at her with mixtures of pity, suspicion, and awkwardness. The careful professional reputation she'd built was crumbling in real time. Jake Mitchell, you need to leave immediately, Marcus said, his voice tight, with anger. But Emma could see uncertainty in his eyes, too. Jake's performance was convincing, and the presence of a lawyer added legitimacy to his claims. Of course, Jake said graciously. I just wanted the truth to be heard. Emma, I hope you get the help you need. As Jake and his lawyer left, the room remained frozen in uncomfortable silence. Emma looked around at faces that had been supportive just days earlier, now clouded with doubt and confusion. Meeting adjourned, Marcus announced tersely. Emma remained seated as the room emptied, colleagues avoiding eye contact as they filed out. David approached hesitantly, his face stricken with guilt. Emma, I'm sorry. I panicked. He put me on the spot and... It's okay, David. Emma's voice was hollow. I understand. But it wasn't okay. Jake had just executed a masterful counterattack, using their personal history to discredit her evidence and positioning himself as the victim of a vindictive ex-lover. Worse, he'd somehow manufactured evidence of her alleged misconduct. Sarah appeared at Emma's side as the room finally emptied. "Emergency meeting, my office. Now." In Sarah's small IT security office, Emma collapsed into a chair. "He's going to destroy me. Everything we built, everything we documented, he's turned it all around." "Not everything," Sarah said grimly. "I saw this coming yesterday when I detected unauthorized access attempts on our secure files. Jake's been trying to hack our evidence for days." "Did he succeed?" "He got into some files before I caught him. But Emma—" Sarah turned her monitor around, showing lines of code. "He didn't just access our files. He planted false evidence in them. Made it look like you'd been altering documents all along." Emma stared at the screen. "So, when the forensics expert analyzes them, they'll find exactly what Jake wants them to find. Digital fingerprints suggesting you manipulated everything." Sarah's expression was fierce. "But I caught him doing it. I have logs of his intrusion, keystroke records, the whole digital trail. Will anyone believe us now, after that performance?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Emma, we need to go nuclear. Full exposure, everything we have, all at once. No more playing by corporate rules." Emma thought about Jake's triumphant expression, about David's forced betrayal, about the doubt she'd seen in Marcus Thompson's eyes. Jake had just proven that he could manipulate any system, turn any truth into a lie. "What do you mean by nuclear?" Sarah's smile was cold and calculating. "I mean, we stop trying to convince the company and start convincing the world. Media, law enforcement, professional associations. Make this too big for anyone to cover up." Emma looked at her friend. Brilliant, loyal Sarah who'd risked everything to help her fight this battle. What if it backfires? What if we end up destroying ourselves? Then we go down fighting instead of cowering. Sarah pulled up a new screen showing contact information for investigative reporters, law enforcement agencies, and professional ethics boards. "Emma, Jake just made a critical mistake. He attacked you publicly, which means everything is now on the record. No more he said, she said." Emma felt something ignite in her chest. Not hope exactly, but a cold determination that burned hotter than despair. "Do it," she said quietly. "All of it." The real war was about to begin. The email from Channel 7's investigative unit arrived at 6:43 a.m., 3 days after Sarah had sent their complete evidence package to 12 different media outlets. Emma read it twice before the words fully registered. "Ms. Richardson, we've verified the financial irregularities you documented. Our forensic accountant confirms $73,000 in fraudulent transactions. We'd like to interview you for our corporate fraud segment airing tonight. Please call immediately." Emma's phone rang as she finished reading. "Sarah? Turn on Channel 7. News. Now." Emma grabbed her remote, her heart pounding as the morning anchor appeared on screen. The banner read, "Breaking. Seattle marketing firm executive charged with embezzlement." Jake Mitchell, former marketing manager at Premier Marketing Solutions, was arrested early this morning on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and computer crimes. The King County Prosecutor's Office alleges Mitchell stole over $73,000 through a sophisticated scheme involving fake vendor payments. Emma sank onto her couch, watching her nightmare finally become someone else's reality. The news footage showed Jake in handcuffs being led from his expensive downtown apartment, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Thompson. "Emergency meeting. My office. 1 hour." Premier Marketing Solutions felt like a battlefield when Emma arrived. Clusters of employees huddled around computers and phones, their voices a low buzz of shock and speculation. The receptionist looked up as Emma passed, her expression unreadable. Marcus Thompson's office was crowded. Besides Marcus, Emma saw the company's legal counsel, two people she didn't recognize in expensive suits, and Jessica Walsh sitting in the corner looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. "Emma, please sit." Marcus's voice was carefully controlled. "First, I owe you an apology. The evidence you brought forward has been completely validated by law enforcement." One of the strangers spoke up. "Ms. Richardson, I'm Detective Morrison with the Financial Crimes Unit. We need to discuss your cooperation with our investigation." Emma nodded, her throat tight. "Of course." The digital forensics analysis of Mitchell's computer revealed extensive criminal activity beyond what you documented. He was planning to expand his embezzlement scheme and had already begun targeting other female employees for harassment campaigns. Jessica Walsh made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Detective Morrison continued. "We also found evidence that he'd hacked into company systems to plant false evidence against you. The forensic timeline clearly shows his unauthorized access and digital manipulation." "What about the lawyer he brought to the meeting?" Emma asked. "Paid for with stolen company funds," the detective replied dryly. "She's cooperating fully now that she knows her retainer came from embezzled money." Marcus leaned forward. "Emma, the board met in emergency session last night. We're implementing immediate changes to prevent anything like this from happening again." The legal counsel spoke up. "Ms. Richardson, we need to discuss Ms. Walsh's role in this matter." All eyes turned to Jessica Walsh, who looked smaller than Emma had ever seen her. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I knew something was wrong. When Jake came to me before your complaint, he seemed too prepared, too confident, about discrediting you." Jessica's hands shook as she continued. "But I was more concerned about protecting the company from a harassment lawsuit than investigating the truth." "Ms. Walsh has submitted her resignation," Marcus said. "Effective immediately." Emma felt no satisfaction watching Jessica's downfall. The woman had enabled Jake's abuse through willful ignorance, but she looked genuinely devastated by the consequences of her choices. "There's more," Detective Morrison said. "Our investigation revealed that Mitchell has a pattern of this behavior. At previous employers, we've identified at least 3 other women who experienced similar harassment and character assassination campaigns." Emma's stomach clenched. "Are they pressing charges?" "2 of them are. The third—" The detective paused. "She attempted suicide after Mitchell destroyed her career at her previous company. She's alive, but her professional life never recovered." The room fell silent. Emma felt tears burn behind her eyes, not for herself, but for the women who hadn't had Sarah's technical skills or David's eventual courage. Women who'd faced Jake's systematic destruction alone. "What happens now?" Emma asked. Marcus straightened. "The board has voted to offer you the permanent marketing manager position, along with a substantial salary increase and full authority to restructure the department." Emma looked around the room, at the legal counsel taking notes, at Jessica, Walsh's crumpled figure, at Detective Morrison waiting to interview her about Jake's crimes. "I need time to consider the offer," she said. After the formal meetings ended, Emma found herself alone with Marcus in his office. "You're hesitating." "About the promotion," he observed. 3 weeks ago you doubted my allegations. Yesterday, half the company thought I was a vindictive ex-girlfriend fabricating evidence." Emma's voice was steady, but tired. "Now, suddenly I'm management material?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "You're right to be skeptical. The truth is, most of us failed you completely. We let institutional bias and Mitchell's manipulation blind us to obvious criminal behavior. So why should I stay? Because you've proven something important, that it's possible to fight back and win. Other women in this company, in this industry, need to see that." Marcus met her eyes directly. "But more than that, you've shown leadership under impossible circumstances. The way you handled the Henderson crisis, built alliances, documented everything methodically, that's not just survival, Emma. That's strategic brilliance. Emma looked out the window at Elliott Bay, remembering the terrified woman who'd fled Jake's apartment 3 years ago with nothing but a suitcase and bruises. If I stay, things change. Real changes, not just policy updates. What kind of changes? Mandatory harassment training that actually works. Anonymous reporting systems that can't be manipulated by management. Financial controls that prevent what Jake did. Emma's voice grew stronger. And if anyone tries to silence or discredit harassment victims again, they're gone. No matter their title or connections. Marcus nodded slowly. You have my full support, and the board's. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment reviewing the news coverage of Jake's arrest. Channel 7 had aired her interview, and her phone had been ringing all day with calls from other companies offering positions, advocacy groups requesting speaking engagements, and reporters wanting follow-up stories. Sarah knocked on her door at 8 p.m., carrying Thai food and champagne. So, Sarah said, settling onto Emma's couch, how does it feel to be Seattle's newest corporate whistleblower hero? Emma considered the question. Exhausting. Surreal. And she paused, searching for the right word. Powerful. For the first time in my life, I feel truly powerful. You were always powerful, Emma. You just needed to remember it. Emma's phone buzzed with a news alert. Former marketing executive denied bail in embezzlement case. She read the article quickly. Jake's lawyer had argued he wasn't a flight risk, but the prosecutor had presented evidence of offshore accounts and forged documents. He's going to prison, Emma said quietly. Good, Sarah replied without hesitation. And every woman he might have targeted in the future is safe, because you refused to be broken. Emma looked at her friend, brilliant, loyal Sarah who'd risked her own career to help fight this battle, and felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Complete, unqualified peace. The war was over. Emma Richardson had won. 6 months later, Emma stood before a packed auditorium at the Seattle Convention Center, delivering the keynote address to the Pacific Northwest HR Association. The banner behind her read, From Victim to Victor, Transforming Workplace Culture. Real change requires more than policy updates, she told the audience. It requires courage from every level of an organization to believe victims, investigate thoroughly, and prioritize human dignity over institutional convenience. Premier Marketing Solutions had become a case study in corporate transformation. Emma's new harassment reporting system, anonymous, independently monitored, and with mandatory escalation protocols, had been adopted by 12 other companies. The financial controls she'd implemented had prevented 2 other potential fraud schemes. David Rodriguez, now her deputy manager, had become one of the department's strongest advocates for inclusive leadership. Marcus Thompson had been promoted to CEO, partly based on his handling of the crisis and commitment to cultural change. The question isn't whether workplace abuse will happen, Emma concluded her speech. The question is whether your organization will enable it or eliminate it. During the Q&A, a young woman raised her hand. What advice do you have for someone currently facing harassment at work? Emma thought of herself 6 months ago, terrified and documenting everything in secret. Document everything. Find allies. And remember, you are not alone, you are not powerless, and you deserve better. The applause was thunderous. 8 months after her keynote, Emma's assistant knocked on her office door. There's a process. Server here with legal documents. Emma's stomach dropped as she accepted the papers. Mitchell v. Richardson, defamation and wrongful prosecution. Jake was suing her from prison, claiming her public statements had destroyed his reputation and career prospects. Unbelievable, Sarah muttered, reading over Emma's shoulder. He's serving 27 months for embezzlement, and he's claiming she ruined his reputation. Emma's lawyer arrived within the hour. This is frivolous, she assured Emma. He's representing himself from prison, which tells you everything about the quality of his legal strategy. But we'll need to respond formally. The lawsuit made local news. Convicted embezzler sues whistleblower, read the headlines. Emma found herself explaining to reporters that even from behind bars, abusers often continue their campaigns of harassment through the legal system. This is exactly why many victims never come forward, she told Channel 7. The abuse doesn't stop with conviction. 3 weeks later, the judge dismissed Jake's lawsuit entirely, calling it a transparent attempt to continue harassing the victim through frivolous litigation. The court awarded Emma attorney's fees and issued a restraining order preventing Jake from any further legal action against her. Standing outside the courthouse, Emma felt the final chapter closing. Jake's last weapon had been neutralized. 1 year later, Emma stood in the conference room that had once been the site of Jake's humiliating introduction meeting. But today, she was launching the Courage to Speak mentorship program, a company-wide initiative connecting harassment survivors with trained advocates. 3 years ago, I thought my career was over, Emma told the assembled group of employees and external participants. I believed I was powerless against someone who seemed to control every narrative, every institution, every outcome. In the audience, she spotted familiar faces. David Rodriguez, now a confident team leader. Marcus Thompson, whose company had become an industry model for ethical leadership. And Dr. Foster, who'd flown in from Portland to witness this moment. But I learned something important, Emma continued. Healing isn't just about surviving trauma. It's about transforming that experience into something that protects others. After the presentation, Emma found a quiet moment in her office. On her desk sat a letter from one of Jake's other victims, thanking Emma for giving her the courage to rebuild her own career. Emma smiled, remembering the terrified woman who'd once hidden in bathroom stalls. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who could turn her deepest wounds into her greatest strength. She was finally completely free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.